That's why I personally prefer the rain garden idea.
Sure.
Maybe it's not surprising that the botanist likes the rain garden and the engineer likes the chamber. So, yeah, I'm trying to match the ideas that will meet the requirements with the specifics of the site. And for instance, all these barberries on the planting plan, it may be that Ellen planted one or two of those, but I think the rest were self-seeded. And they're actually, some are in the stream. They're in high points of the stream there. And I recommend at the bottom that instead of digging them out, that they be killed in place, because to pull them out will disturb a lot of the soils around the stream. And I would like to use this technique I've used at Willett Pond for Nepra of using a glyphosate that's approved for wetland areas, that's namely rodeo. And instead of spraying on the foliage, which spreads a lot around, you do something that Carol Stocker taught me, which is to cut the stems, and within 30 seconds before any scar tissue can form, you spray them with a little spray bottle.
Yep.
And that is effective at killing them. So I'm looking forward to killing these barberries.
Don't sound like a botanist.
There are quite a few of them further down the stream in the conservation land, and they may have migrated from here as the seeds washed down or the birds carried them. But I have seen natural areas in Connecticut where they form a complete understory and choke everything else out.
Right.
Yeah, they really are pretty vicious. And thank you, Judith, for liking my ideas for plants. When you see the site, you'll see why I like the low ones where I did, because I don't want them to hide the stream completely, as they would if they were tall shrubs like arrowwood or winterberry. And why I called for small understory trees in the back was because there are larger trees back there, and we don't want the trees we plant to shoot up into them and compete with them for the canopy. Instead, we want understory trees that don't naturally grow into the canopy, but can grow in partial shade, as this is. But there's quite a lot of light that comes in over the house. So I think I would like, in that area, to see delicate, single-stemmed, woody trees of dogwood size, approximately. And that's what these are. Sometimes the witch hazel can be multi-stemmed. That's a very pretty tree in the fall. So together they will form the taller trees and the understory trees will form a sort of a vantage into the woods behind the property that should be quite colorful in the fall. So that's the basic idea. And I'm sure you will understand it and have good ideas and suggestions for us when you see the site.
All right. Any questions from commissioners?
Thank you.
Abutters, members of the public? We'll see you sometime Saturday morning.
Just wanted to add a little bit of information. As you know, there is also a septic system improvement issue, and it's a significant issue. And I wanted you to know that we have been progressing in our discussions with the Board of Health. We had a good meeting last night, and they are encouraging us to move forward with a proposal for an advanced Presby Enviro, whatever. It's an advanced system that would be proposed to replace the existing leaching field. We know this is a difficult issue for the Conservation Commission as well, so we're working on, our engineer, Jeff Kane, has done a lot of research. He's does a lot of septic systems. He has looked for research and has obtained research from the University of New Hampshire to back up the proposal that he's making and to make a very good argument why this is an improvement over the current system in every way. So, without saying more, because we haven't even filed an NOI yet, we will be proceeding to file an NOI. We hope to have it on your agenda next month, but we hope to provide you with a detailed analysis with scientific backing for the proposal. We'll make our best argument that we can. I don't think we would be proceeding if we didn't feel that this was a good proposal. I don't think the owner would be supporting our moving forward. So we hope that you'll agree with us, but we'll just do our best to present a very good application next month, and you should expect to see that in a week or two coming to your desks.
Where is the current leaching field?
The current leaching field is in the driveway.
In the driveway,
It's under the
right.
gravel
Okay.
driveway, which of course is in two parts, but
Yeah.
it's a square. And the Presby environmental system, it's a different technology. It uses a slightly smaller footprint.
Sure.
It treats the sewage differently in the leaching field. It contains it differently. It produces less effluent, and the quality of the effluent in terms of what's in it that's bad is much better.
But the plan is to basically replace the existing location with new, basically remove the fill in the existing system and come back in with a new system in exactly the same place, slightly smaller.
Conservation Commission has to approve that work because of its location. Every part of this lot is
Yeah.
within the Board of Health's 50-foot setback requirement. And although we're not within the 25-foot in the leaching field, we're very close to it.
Okay.
So you definitely would have a concern, and we'll need to be convinced. We'll do our best to do that next time we see you in May, and then we'll see you at the site walk.
Marion, apologies for the throat, but I just want to make sure I have this correct in my mind. There's water connection from the house, main house to the carriage house, but there's no septic connection from the carriage house.
There will be an ejector pump bringing sewage back to the tank, which is where it
From the
goes
carriage
first,
house.
from the carriage house.
Okay.
And you don't have the plan yet because
That's
I
what I
haven't
was
given
looking
it to you,
for.
so I apologize. I mean, I'm talking about it without you having a plan in front of
That's
you.
all right.
But you did
It'll be
ask me,
forthcoming.
at the last meeting, you asked me how the carriage house would be heated, and the answer is that it
Electric.
would just be electric, and all it's going to be is the shortest connection between the house and the carriage house for water and an electrical connection.
Thank you.
That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, we'll see you Saturday morning.
See you Saturday.
Thanks.
Next on the agenda is 693 711 Randolph Avenue.
You know, I saw Jim Burke here earlier. Let me just. Oh, are they?
He went out the last call.
Huh? I was afraid they go out and
Huh?
you can't get back in if the door locks itself.
All set. Good evening, welcome. Can you identify yourselves, please, for the record?
Jim Burke with the Selberg and Associates.
Scott Morrison from Ecotech,
Paul Holland with the Holland Companies.
and Marilyn Newman from Inslevin.
Good evening to all. Thank you very much. What can you tell us?
Well, we sent a package to you guys fairly recently that I think most of that information you guys already have through the process that we've proceeded. We wanted to get kind of the ZBA and the Conservation Commission kind of on the same page. And based on that submission, they've received the same package. You guys have the same package, so we're kind of gelled at this point. We prepared a DPW response letter, which was part of that package, which answered a lot of Joe Lynch's questions with regards to stormwater, water supply, sewer, a lot of issues with regards to infrastructure. The plans themselves, I'd say, have not really been revised significantly. Most of the information has been added with regards to the wetlands crossing, with regards to the retaining wall construction and details of that nature. We have since at that time completed the soil testing, which you guys requested, with regards to borings as well as test pits in all the drainage, underground drainage detention basins. That report is forthcoming. There are some revisions based on the plans, based on those findings. The Rawls rate that we used has been brought from 1.02 to 0.52. There is, the majority of the soil that we found was a sandy loam. There was a significant amount of loamy sand and a decent amount of loam. And it was the fact that we found some loam on the site dictated the 0.52. Instead of wrestling with the whole issue of saying the majority of the soil is one, the Rawls rate would be accurate, the one that I used, I decided to revise the drainage and go with a more conservative figure. Those drainage calculations are complete. We're just I'm working towards getting that package together along with the soils report, along with a lot of revisions to the plans that answers the Judy Nitch, Nitch Engineering review letter. That was fairly extensive, and I know John had a chance to take a look through it. I don't know if the other members have, but they had some concerns with regards to how the stormwater management standards were met, and I believe the revisions show that that we meet and exceed some of those standards. So I guess what I'm saying is that the next package that you guys are going to receive, and it's going to be soon, is going to answer a significant amount of your concerns.
All right, can you-
said some of those, you said meet or exceed some of those standards? You meant
Oh,
meet or
all
exceed
the-
all of
the
those
standards,
standards?
yeah, sorry. My mistake.
Can you, I don't know if we've got another niche report, Kathy, do you know? But if you submit reports, can you, to all the commission members, can you include a copy of that?
Sure, absolutely.
So that everybody sees?
Did the findings in terms of the soil change your structural loading of that retaining wall?
No, it did not. And actually, we found, the borings found a tightly packed ablation till sandy gravel. There is about 3 feet of loam and subsoil
Sure.
that will need to be removed, and once we get down to bearing capacity, we'll bring back that up to that grade to with structural stone and place the block.
That's at the retaining wall. What about at the bridge?
That is the bridge.
All right,
I
what
was talking
about
the
retaining wall up on the
lower
building? Right? Right where you
Same,
dumped
yeah,
stuff.
it's the same stuff.
Same
Yeah,
condition?
it's the same stuff. Yeah, the soils, up on the hill, the first 9, 10 feet was just gorgeous sand, and then it got a little silty below that, and that's where we took our samples, because that's where our detention basins are going, in those particular locations. So wherever, we did a hydrometer test as well as a sieve analysis, and that will provides the amount of gives you the soil texture exactly where you need to be with regards to sizing these detention basins.
What about the load capacity? I'm talking about the bridge area now.
Yep.
Because one of the issues was whether or not you're going to put like a 4-foot deep footing for the bridge that was basically solid and then had like a 10-foot opening, as opposed to sort of a long concrete plank with sonotube type pillars.
Right.
Does the soil bearing capacity impact either one of those alternatives?
No, No, the advantage of the product that we're specifying in the Stone Strong is that you have a 3-foot by 8-foot by 44-inch wide stone precast concrete block that you bury halfway as your first course. So that puts it 18 inches below grade as you start. And then the bearing capacity for that particular soil, the geotech engineer, believe, specified that you can support 6,000 pounds per square foot on that, for that soil. I mean, you're looking at maybe 4 that will be exerted on this retaining wall. So the soils itself are, solid.
All right, yeah, help me out. I'm going to ask you a very stupid question, but 6,000, what'd you say, 4,000?
Yeah, 4,000 for the retaining wall. I mean, help me out. I mean, the house is 3.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so, you've got twice that, without any sort of, compaction or
right.
additional stuff.
You just said it was 18 inches, so don't you have a requirement to go below frost? And especially in a wet,
Yeah,
wetland?
the way, because then you're coming in with, the structural stone
Sure.
that sits on the base of that. No, you don't need to go below frost with this product.
I find that amazing.
Yeah.
That the bridge doesn't blow itself apart in a couple of years.
Yeah, it's, and I've done several of them now.
Yes, within the last 18 months.
It's a proven product, it is, it's everywhere. You've seen the walls, and they
they've
put them
been
in,
around for a long time.
they used it in Quincy for the Town Brook, the realignment for Town Brook. And,
Quincy Square.
yeah,
So,
So you only go down 18 inches?
that's it.
And
And you have,
you go down 18 inches and put the concrete block on top of that?
correct, well, you have structural stone below that. So you have, I don't think it's more than a foot, but we'll have more than that. We'll have 18 inches of it because we gotta remove 3 feet of loam and subsoil in that particular location, in the crossing.
so you're actually down 4.5 feet.
3 feet. So, because we're
just
gonna
said 3
remove the
feet
soil,
over.
bring it back up with the stone.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
with the stone, okay.
Yeah.
So that answers your frost for it?
No, it doesn't really, because it's gonna be saturated with water. I mean, the whole substructure there, gravel or no gravel, is gonna be saturated. It's gonna freeze, it's gonna heave. In my opinion.
Yeah.
Well, we'll know where we can find the contractor.
We had talked about, what you're showing now is actually a concrete culvert that's poured, it looks like it's dropped in place or poured in place.
Correct.
In- on the current drawing.
No, actually, it's precast.
It's a drop-in.
It's a drop-in with strip footings.
Right.
That are gonna run.
The
Yeah.
gravel. So, we had talked before about, I have concerns just about the superimposed load of these concrete blocks and gravel, potentially affecting water flow. And now we're trying to potentially trying to channel it into this 10-foot wide precast concrete in order to let it flow through. Well, I know that we had thrown out some other ideas about cost-effective strategies, and I'm not trying to, I'm just, my question still gets back to the discussion of affecting the water flow under the bridge zone, and is whether or not one of these elements is gonna be adequate.
I'd have to say yes. I mean, one of the most difficult things in the world to do is create a dam, believe it or not. Water finds its way. So picture, if you will, this wall sitting 18 inches, sitting on this stone and putting, 4,000 pounds of square feet of force down. Water's flowing through that soil. That soil is going to tighten up a little bit, so it's not going to move as fast. So back up a little bit. So I think you'd probably have, I mean, a negligible amount of hydraulic head, if you will, you know, so you'd have a little bit of a jump. But I don't even think you could measure it based on the expanse of the flow path. I mean, you're looking at 200 feet of crossing of where this wall's sitting. Plus, you're also having, you know, a 12-foot wide opening with no stress on it whatsoever. So you're gonna, you know, I can just picture the flow net backing up slightly, but having really negligible impacts on it.
All right, I've got I guess it's a comment first that'll lead to a question, but I have some limited advantage because I was at the ZBA hearing on this, and having read the niche report, and I don't think the commission members know, but there was a recommendation that the original plan, and I don't know what's been revised, I haven't gone over these, but the original plan had one 4-foot sidewalk,
Correct.
and niche recommended that you increase that to 5 feet on one side and then put a 5-foot sidewalk on the other side. What does, I don't know if you've adopted that in the revised plans?
Have not.
What difference would that make in terms of water flow in the foundation? Because we're going from basically 4 feet as part of the roadway to 10 feet. So there's a 6-foot addition to the width of the road.
Yeah, oh, you say as far as that impacting the water flow?
Yes.
None.
Or the weight, you know.
No, it's still.
Much
I mean,
wider bridge.
It is, but it's still, you know, kind of, it still has the same pressure. In a sense, it's still 4,000 pounds per square foot. The fact that it's wider doesn't have an impact with regards to how it sits on that same square foot of area. You know what I mean?
All right. And what does it do to the 5,000 feet of altered wetlands?
Well,
you were awfully close.
Yeah, if we end up putting, I'll be honest with you, if we end up, you know, the crossing's about 200 feet. If we go another foot wide on the road, it's gonna put us over 5,000 square feet. So
if you do another 6 feet,
yeah, it's gonna
be
put us way over. I mean, honestly, if we're gonna go over 5,000 square feet, I might as well put in, you know,
a drawbridge.
road, you know, double barrel, you know, with a nice little landscape center. What we're trying to do is, you know, is maintain the threshold and minimize the impacts to the wetlands. When we first started this, the applicant didn't own 711 Randolph Ave, and we were looking at alternatives for the crossing, and we were following the old Meg Lane layout, and we were up at, you know, 8,000, you know, maybe even 10,000 square feet of alteration. So the next course of business was trying to figure out, okay, how do we get across it and minimize the crossing areas? Because honestly, that's an alternative analysis that we'd have to accomplish anyway. I suggested they purchase 711 Randolph Ave, and they did. And once they provided that, that allowed us to subdivide off that parcel and proceed straight across and not use the Meg Lane layout and get under the 5,000 square foot threshold. Now, I understand that everyone's pushing us with regards to, you know, vehicular access and pedestrian access and egress and saying we need a wider road. I absolutely unequivocally disagree. And the reason being is that I have a 4-foot sidewalk that complies with state code, handicap regulations. It complies. In fact, there are regulations where, you know, on that 4-foot wide sidewalk, it has to have a 3-foot minimum to allow handicap accessibility through it. So I look at it from a standpoint of it's.
Does that change if the kids have to go to Randolph Avenue to pick up the bus?
Nope. It does not. Now, the thing is, I also have 24 feet of pavement. 24 feet of pavement is actually a fairly wide road these days. So a lot of people are reducing the widths of road widths to 20 feet. 22 is fairly common these days. So my suggestion, you know, it was, okay, fine. If you want a wider sidewalk, let's talk about a thinner roadway. And I really haven't gotten any feedback from anybody, because they really was kind of pushing us towards widening the whole construction corridor, which again, is unnecessary. So, the thing is, I would really kind of focus on the fact that we've got the 43-foot, I believe it's 43 feet wide of, from hay bale to hay bale, to get this roadway in with pedestrian access. And if they want to reduce the road to benefit the sidewalk, great. If they want to maintain the road and the sidewalk as it is, fine, I can live with that too. But at this point, we're not in a position to believe that the access is better just because it's wider. I mean, there's standard nominal dimensions that are typical in design, and I stand by that.
And that includes emergency access? I mean, you talk about a 10-foot corridor, that's not really enough for emergency vehicles.
It is, believe it or not. I mean, the thing is too, is you gotta take into account, it's a driveway first and foremost. And it's 90 units. So you see a fire truck or an emergency vehicle, what do? You get out of the way.
Yeah. But 10 feet wide, you're not leaving much room if you're on one lane coming one way.
I don't think the fire engine is even 8 feet wide, and I can certainly get some dimensions of that.
Sure. No, have you talked to them about what their minimum requirements are for the road? I mean, in terms of what they need to see?
Like I say, there aren't any regulations in Milton that dictate with regards to what the driveway dimensions need to be. I picked 24 feet because that is what the public way is. It's 12 and 12. So that's the dimension I picked. I picked a 4-foot wide sidewalk because that's what the regulations allow, and with a 6-foot curb, and that's where we're at.
What's the 6-foot curb?
6-inch curb.
Okay.
Sorry, 6-inch wide.
Okay.
So the sidewalk has to be 4 feet, and then you have to have the curb. So it's theoretically 4.5 feet wide. If you want to be a daredevil and balance that curb.
Jim, in the discussions, there's some, as you know, concern about the safety vehicle, particularly fire truck access. I think the clarification that people need is an understanding as to whether or not that is a driveway or a road.
It's a driveway.
Okay.
Driveway for 90 units? Wow.
That's my...
With buses and, school buses and
Yeah, I mean,
fire trucks and delivery trucks?
like I say, a 24-foot wide road is pretty standard. It is, I'd say back in the 70s, there used to be 26. I live on a road that's like 28 feet wide. That was built in the 70s, and it's, it's ridiculous.
Grand Boulevard.
It is.
In the style to which you're accustomed.
They put chip seal on it last year, and man, it just, ruins my skateboarding. But like I say, I can't wait to get past the whole access issue, because we worked hard to minimize the impacts to the wetlands, because crossing wetlands is done kind of, as a last resort, and here we are. We're trying to access this upland, and, this particular piece of land has been looked at several times, and, I don't recall what the impacts were previously with regards to wetlands fill and the like, but we established to maintain that 5,000 square foot threshold, and we're looking to maintain it.
All right. What can you tell us about the vernal pool? Scott, maybe you address
Sure.
that?
The commission was concerned about the presence of a potential vernal pool on the property. I went back through notes and summarized it in a report or a letter stating that, you know, we've been on site numerous times, never observed prolonged periods of ponding, which would indicate vernal pool species. Also, you know, have never observed any amphibian breeding, you know, egg masses or tadpoles or anything of that nature.
Yeah, and that's what I noticed on your letter here. It's confined basin, holds water for minimum of 2 consecutive, free of adult fish within the area subject to protection. But what about the amphibian egg masses and all that? Isn't that a definitional criteria as well? I'm just looking at your letter here.
Yes.
All right, I'm not criticizing, I expected to have, you know, another criteria. You know.
No, that's how what's defined. You know, it must meet those requirements and have the amphibian breeding evidence.
All right. My question was, and this is a real question. When you say a confined basin, does it have to have like a defined boundary, or can it just be, you know, gently sloped so that the water kind of gradually goes up like that, or do you need like a basin, like a bathtub?
You need a basin that's going to hold water.
Sure,
in
right,
long
but you
periods
have
of
it,
time.
but there's no necessarily a defined, you know, wall or
Bank, there's no bank.
No, I guess what you're saying, it doesn't have to be an abrupt change. It could be, you know, an area that ponds and has very
Okay,
gradual slopes.
it's an honest question. I'm
Okay,
asking it.
but by, just correct me if I'm wrong, by that you mean it has no flow. It's a basin, therefore it has no flow.
And
As
it's gonna-
soon as you have flow through it, then the potential for egg masses to form and stay and all of that basically goes away?
No.
Not necessarily.
No.
But it doesn't have any flow, so it's a basin, so it has no flow through it.
Generally, the vernal pools that I've seen, observed, inspected, are generally areas that have, you know, a foot to a few feet of water, not connected to a stream. Generally, the stream connection gives a path for potentially fish to migrate up
Okay.
and feed on
But
the,
you can have spring water feed.
excuse me?
You can have spring water feed.
Oh,
Into a
absolutely.
vernal pool.
Yep, yep.
But Scott, when I read your
Spring.
report, what confused me was, you're
Being
citing
graduates of this vernal
your
pool school.
assessment of the site from 2011 to 2013, because you make a note here to the present, but then your little number 1 says including to March of 2013. Have you actually surveyed the site? Have you walked it in the last 2 years or this spring to look for vernal pools?
Yeah, I actually looked, I was on site yesterday. I had to look at some soils for the replication areas, but I also went through and looked on the, you know, 4 areas that could pond water, and I've observed no evidence of amphibian breeding.
Was there any snow on the site?
No.
It's clear at this point.
Clear of snow. The only place I did see some snow was behind the DPW yard. There's some snow that's pushed up against the fence.
Yeah.
But other than that, there's no snow on the site.
Did you look underneath any of the logs on site, down trees for salamanders?
There's not a, I'd say the down trees that are there, some of them are really large. I don't think they'd be easily moved.
I'm trying to find out what testing you did this afternoon for, and yesterday.
Visual
Looking-
observations, what you'd expect to see this time of year would be wood frog egg masses, spotted salamander egg masses. You may find, you know, wood frogs may be present in these ponded areas, but there was nothing. The areas are, there's an area of ponding here.
Can you name what they are, like D, E, C?
One within the E series, 2 small areas in through here on the C series, and there's a little bit of ponding in the the D series here.
All right. What about going way back go back to the houses on Randolph Avenue? Yeah, in that area right there. Is there anything in there? Because, years ago, when another applicant was, and I can't tell, probably 15 years ago, but some of the neighbors came in with photographs of tremendous flooding in there. And it wasn't just like a single, 50-year storm. It seemed to stay there for quite a while. Is there anything in that
There
area?
is water, essentially it looks like, ranging from a 1/4 inch to a couple inches of sheet flow throughout this area. It just kind of sheet flows through. If you stand there and look, you can actually see it moving. But there's really no defined channel through there. But I don't think, you'd expect if it were a vernal pool in there, you'd expect 6 inches or more of like I say, a confined depression with standing water.
All right.
Going back to those photos, I think I saw those early on. I don't know if it was the ANRAD meeting or early on in this notice of intent process, but you essentially have a large expanse of the DPW yard that funnels down and flows through this wetland. So it wouldn't surprise me one bit if you had a significant rain event, whether it be a thunderstorm with heavy rains or simply just a heavy rain, spring heavy rain event, that you get some substantial water kind of flowing through there.
Okay. Arthur, can you give us an update on Matt Byrne?
Matt's all set to go, and what he needs is the only remaining requirement is permission from the property owner to access the land to do his work.
But written.
He asked for written, yes.
Is that acceptable?
I think we'd like to first at least review the scope of services in the quote. We haven't forwarded anything on that.
Okay,
And-
and you're certainly entitled to that.
Yeah.
But it's basically, if I could summarize it, it's just a request to view the land to see if there's any evidence of a vernal pool. It's not complicated.
That's fine. I think I would like the site visits to be coordinated through me and have a representative there.
Sure.
That's fine. That makes sense.
How should we do that? Have Matt call Paul directly? Or do you want to go through somebody else?
No, I think that's fine. You can reach out to me directly.
We'll take all of your contact information and get it to Matt.
Yeah, and I'm sorry.
just-
He can reach out to me directly.
Yeah, I'll just take your contact information
Okay, yeah,
afterwards
that's
and I'll relay it to him.
Okay.
And so just to clarify, you'll be able to give me some sort of scope of the.
Yes, I think it's essentially as I just stated,
Yep.
but he can put it into technical terms.
Thank you.
Matt, and if you've seen his, do you know him, Scott?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think he worked for Natural Heritage for a number of years, and he's fully qualified, so.
Yeah, he generally gives a seminar at the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissions each year on vernal pools.
Could we also just inquire, as we have with respect to other consultant peer reviewers, has Matt Byrne been retained by any of the parties who have made appearances at the commission or the ZBA in opposition to the project for other purposes?
No, we used him once, our commission used him once in the past.
Right.
But that's the only experience we've got, just that one time.
Which was for what project?
41 Pleasant.
41
Pleasant
Pleasant
Street.
Street,
Yeah.
next on the list.
And I'm referring to, when I said other parties, I'm referring to abutters who have appeared through their counsel. Has Matt Byrne worked for any of those parties, as far
I
as you
don't
know?
believe so, no. He's never appeared before
I just
us.
know him from the conservation,
Okay.
the annual conference. I
Just checking.
went to a seminar. Okay. All right. Any
So we
other
follow up on that.
I can
questions?
hand that to you, Dylan.
Yeah. Could you, in the drawings that you submitted, you have a section through the road? You have a...
Yes.
Could you explain that drawing?
Yeah.
It's not, it's,
They actually did it through the culvert. Okay, so you basically, this is,
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm looking at sheet driveway profile.
Oh, the profile? That's just a profile of the driveway. That,
So I'm trying to understand, I just see, one comment on here was open bottom box culvert, which made me wonder what you had feeding an open bottom box culvert. But that's I'm thinking about it now, that's the culvert that's going underneath the road, right?
exactly right.
Okay, so can you just talk me through the other elements that are in the drawing here?
Okay, so.
Because it's just a complicated drawing with all the
Yeah,
information on it.
you're absolutely right, and honestly, it's helpful for a guy like me to make sure the pipes aren't smashing into each other.
Sure.
So basically, it's showing a profile of the roadway and its grade. You got a 6% grade here, and the low point here. The low points, obviously, will be catch basins.
Sure.
And drainage is tied in with the piping here. You also have the water line. Water line is going underneath. It basically comes to the culvert. You're gonna angle it down, probably
Oh, right.
put
Yep.
an elbow on it and get underneath the culvert and go up above it. Sewer's gonna do the same thing. We're gonna have a drop manhole right before the culvert and gonna connect up to an existing sewer manhole on the opposite side of the culvert.
So that's a pressured main? I mean, that's
No, no.
not a pressure main, but it's a,
Gravity. It's a gravity main.
so it's a siphon.
No, it's a drop manhole is basically a structure that, there's two types you can do, and my guess is the town of Milton likes the jug handles, and picture basically a jug, a pipe will come into the structure.
Sure.
And they'll brick up half the pipe as it enters it. It's like, kind of like an emergency overflow. And then outside the wall of that structure, you basically have a drop pipe that comes all the way down and then flows in just like a regular invert, so it sweeps in and flows that way. And that's basically a drop manhole. It's a fairly typical, if you have a large, elevation drop, that's how you make it up in a short distance.
So it's not siphon, it's basically,
It's
the
all
whole
gravity.
thing is constant,
Yep.
constant full. I mean, you filled it up.
No, it's not, I mean,
Full,
no, it flows when it flows.
I'm just looking at the diagram and it appears that it goes down and then comes back up again, and I'm wondering, how does it come back up again?
Well, the sewer right here?
Yes.
It runs
Oh,
perpendicular.
I'm sorry. Okay.
So, yeah, I guess I could have added a little ellipse in there to show the pipe.
I'm just trying to understand the drawing,
Yeah.
that's all. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions?
I had another comment. We talked about the level spreader to distribute the water
Yes.
flow, because we're basically collecting the entire site, and we're dumping, you previously had shown that as just coming to a single
Point discharge.
point discharge.
Right.
You've shown a level spreader that spreads it out, but I'm of the opinion that that's not, that it
Too
needs-
short?
It's too short.
Okay.
And I'm just only in the sense of looking at the entire site and how that would be sheet flowing over the site now.
Sure.
We're feeding that in, we're running it through a pipe, we're feeding it out. We want to spread that out so we're not,
Okay, right now I think I want to say it's 15 feet. What do you?
I just thought it was too short. I mean,
Okay.
if you look at how the flow would work over the contours as it currently happens,
Yeah.
if you think about what that flow is and provide something that.
I got it. I can probably provide a velocity
Something like that. You base it on
that comes out of one of the orifices and based on a 25-year storm.
Sure.
That we can use, I don't know, 3.5 CFS or something like
I
that.
don't know if you're
Uh,
recommending, but when I look at that, it looks too small.
Fair enough. I'll check it out.
Thank you.
Sure.
Questions, commissioners? Abutters, members of the public? Yes, sir. come forward and introduce yourself, please.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Joe Mullins, and I'm in a butter.
Welcome.
I didn't really expect to be speaking tonight, but I'm glad I came. I would like to urge the Conservation Commission not to grant a waiver from the Milton wetland bylaws. I don't think it's appropriate, and I think I heard somebody say at the March 31st hearing, and it might have been you, Mr. Chairman, that in the 25-foot no disturb zone, it will be disturbed before, during, and after construction of this proposed plan. And
Correct.
is that correct?
Yes, it is
Right.
presented at this time.
Okay.
Now, just remember, it's not the entirety of it. I mean, during construction, there's going to be a lot of disturbance, but the final plan that you look at, and I think Jim probably has the percentages, and probably point out on the map where that final
I understand
intrusion would be.
there'll be a retaining wall within that
That's correct.
non-disturbed zone. I don't think it's appropriate, but aside from that, I'm just urging you not to issue a waiver, okay? Aside from that, I have a...
Oh, can I, before you move on, we don't issue waivers. This is kind of an unusual circumstance because we actually denied the application under the bylaw. So that's done. We denied their application. And then we are continuing the hearing on the State Wetlands Protection Act. Now, the waiver you're talking about, I think, is the ZBA's capacity to issue a comprehensive permit. And in so doing, they can waive the application of the town bylaw. But this is a little bit unusual because sometimes applications are sequenced. They go to the ZBA first, and they get some kind of a waiver. In fact, we just had one on the last, I don't know if you were listening to the Hendrys, the 131 Elliott Street. That's what the ZBA did in that case. They entered a waiver that the town bylaw would not be applicable. But they had environmental concerns and then kicked back the state wetlands concerns to us. In this case, the applicant went to two different places at the same time. They went to the ZBA seeking a comprehensive permit. They also came to us and filed a notice of intent under both the bylaw and the State Wetlands Protection Act. So we looked at it and said, we don't think it's buildable because of the 25-foot non-disturbance zone. So we denied the permit under the town bylaw. But we're continuing to assess it under the State Wetlands Protection Act, which does not have a 25-foot non-disturbance zone.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
What are their options if you've denied the order of conditions with regard to the non-disturbed zone?
They could appeal the bylaw denial to the Superior Court, or they could do, because the Wetlands Protection Act is appealed to the DEP, but the bylaw has to be appealed to the Superior Court. But I think what they're actually doing is they're continuing their case before the ZBA, and probably eventually they're going to be looking for a waiver from the ZBA, which would put us in a very awkward position because we've already denied it, which is appealable to the Superior Court. I suspect what they're going to do is seek a waiver from the ZBA and then say, you've been trumped. And I don't know the answer to that question. I have no idea.
That doesn't sound like it makes sense to me.
No.
I'm not an attorney, of course, but...
I am, but it doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, okay, I've got a little bit of experience with 40B, but I've got some comments, and it seems like that no one's willing to tell the emperor he has no clothes. The fact of the matter is, this whole site plan is very difficult. The whole site itself is difficult. The low part is all wet, and if you walk behind those houses, you're going to get your feet wet unless you're wearing
Right.
hip boots. Aside from that, the site climbs steeply, and it's really putting 90 units onto what was a Meg Lane two-lot single-family subdivision. And I've been living on Highland Street. My wife and I raised our family up there for the last 35 years. So I'm well aware of it. It's really shoehorning this onto a site. And I guess I should, through full disclosure, explain that I am a real estate developer, or have been for the last 50 years. they're tiptoeing through through the wetland, just to avoid that 5,000 square feet, as Mr. Burke explains. It doesn't seem like it's very smart, wise, and I think it's very dangerous, and I'll tell you why. The police chief correctly said you can't stop school buses on Randolph Avenue. So if you have to pull onto that 24-foot wide road, the fire chief was asked also, the school bus, by the way, they're going to have to back out onto Route 28, a four-lane highway, state highway.
Back out?
Back out, because they can't turn around. There's no turnaround on site. And the fire chief, when he came and reported on the 31st, said, I think it was Mr. Mullen who asked the question, he says, how many times do you think you'll be coming out to the site? He said, perhaps 3 to 5 times a week. And he says, when I come out, he said, I come out with a fire truck, a pumper truck, a ladder truck, and a command vehicle. He didn't mention a police vehicle, but nevertheless, he says, when I'm on site, nobody gets out. Every one of those vehicles has to back out on Route 28. That's very unsafe, okay? It doesn't make sense to me. There is no turnaround on site. And as a matter of fact, I was a little concerned, because I spoke to the fire chief. I said, can you get your fire vehicle around the 4 sides of the building? He said, no. He said, but it's sprinkled, so I don't have to get to the back. I still don't understand that. So I think it's too dense, dangerous. And by the way, if you have a trash truck come in, trash truck has to back out. I mean, no one's spoken about the curb cut with the Department of Transportation. The last time I heard about it, they've been having phone calls, but hadn't got through the Department of Transportation. Now, I suppose they could create a MEPA violation, perhaps environmental report requirement if there's a severe impact. I don't want to speculate, except the Department of Transportation controls Route 28, not the town of Milton. So I guess, without rambling on, I'll say that I spoke to Mr. Lynch at DPW, and the time I spoke to him, which was about a month ago, he said he had had a critique of this plan and hadn't had a response as of a month ago. Now, maybe there's been a response since, I don't know. I spoke to the police chief, and I heard him speak quite eloquently about all the traffic problems on Route 28. More traffic accidents there than on any other street in Milton, including Route 138. And I myself have been involved in 2 accidents. I was stopped at Reed Street waiting to make a left turn, heading north, and a car pulled up behind me and veered away to avoid hitting me and totaled another car. And then heading south at Chickatawbut in the morning, I was hit by an MBTA bus flying through that intersection. So it's a very high-speed commuter route, 4 lanes into Boston. So it's a very high trafficked area. So the police chief was quite concerned. He doesn't recommend that his officers stop anyone between Reed Street and Hallen Avenue because there's no place to turn around. And because there are traffic lights at Reed Street and Reedsdale, you couldn't possibly put another traffic light at this driveway. And you're correct, it's not a driveway, it's got to be a road. It's 90 units in there. So the whole thing just doesn't make sense, okay? I'm speaking from my own personal experience, and I don't really like speaking against affordable housing because I've been doing it for the last 50 years, but I can't sit still. And I told Mr. Holland this when I met with him briefly because I wanted to see if he would meet with the abutters and probably try to find some common ground. Now, I've checked Mr. Holland out in his company. They're a very good reputation, and I know the architect, Shesky, because he's been an architect for me for several times. A good contractor, good architect, a bad plan. And I was at, and I'm going to stop pretty soon. I was at the March 18th hearing when the peer environmental engineer was there, and Mr. Leonard held up your denial of order of conditions. And he said, I just received this. This was in March, because I think you issued it in February.
Hold on just a second,
Denial,
okay?
is that correct?
Just wait a minute.
Oh,
Okay, go ahead. You can ask the question again.
Well, Chairman Leonard said, and he held it up, he said, I just received this in March. But then he realized it was written in February. And he asked the environmental peer reviewer, have you seen this denial of the order of conditions? He said, no. And then he said to Mr. Burke in the audience, have you seen it? And Mr. Burke said, no. And I thought that was kind of strange in March 18th, because it had been issued in February. I'm going to stop, okay? But I'll be happy to answer any questions, but obviously, I'm very concerned.
But the question actually doesn't go to you, but you've raised a good point. What about a turnaround in the, we don't have the full site plan up, but
The way
is there any turnaround there?
they are backing out on site, and they'll be backing, they'll be coming down here using this turn and pulling out that way. That's the movement. Coming down here, back in.
So trash trucks, buses,
Yep, trash trucks will be, but trash trucks will be pulling in here, backing out and gone.
so they're
Same thing.
not, they're not backing out onto Randolph Avenue?
No,
There's
they're
a,
gonna be using the driveway configuration here. It's just like any other typical hammerhead that,
Are you saying the fire trucks, ladder trucks, and pumpers are going to be able to turn around there?
yes, sir.
Wow. Wow. That road should be much wider. I mean, if you're going
24
to,
feet, sir, I mean, if you're a developer, you must know that 24 feet's a pretty standard road.
that's a driveway, that's not a road.
24 feet is a standard public way, pavement width.
You said yourself that if you were trying to hold it down so that you didn't exceed the 5,000 square feet. That's
Right.
not a good reason.
So you're telling me you pave wider than 24 feet?
Yes, I have.
I doubt it.
well, no, let's direct the comments to the commission, please.
It's a very dangerous plan, Mr. Chairman, and I would ask you, I guess, maybe I was mistaken. I thought you had to issue a waiver of the local bylaw.
No, the ZBA issues the waiver of the local bylaw as part of their comprehensive permit.
The ZBA does.
Now, it depends on how you use the term waiver, because if somebody applies, if it were not a 40B project and they came to us, we would consider both the Wetlands Protection Act and the town bylaw. We do have the capacity to waive the town bylaw. I'm not talking about a 40B project. I'm just talking about a regular notice of intent. So we would have to consider whether or not we would waive the 25-foot non-disturbance. So if you're using it in that sense, we would have the capacity to waive. But we didn't. We actually imposed the 25-foot non-disturbance, and under that bylaw provision, we denied the permit. And that apparently is what John Leonard had at the ZBA hearing.
So,
We did not waive it.
let me ask you a question. If you've issued a denial of an order of conditions,
Yes.
the ZBA can override that?
That's the same question. It's like the flip side of the same question that I
That's a
don't.
litigating matter.
Right.
Is that what has to go to Superior Court?
Well, if they appeal directly our denial of the permit under the bylaw, the answer is yes. That's where
They'll
it's
probably go
litigated.
to ZBA, is what you're saying.
Well, they'll try that first, but then we have an existing issue, because we've issued a denial.
Right, right.
It's appealable only to the Superior Court, and they have not done that. So I don't want to guess as to what their plan of action is.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I wanted to express my concern, and I am reluctant to oppose affordable housing since I've had a history of doing so, okay? But I felt like, and I told Mr. Holland that, I couldn't sit back and say nothing.
All right, well, I appreciate it, Mr. Mullen. Thank you very much for coming in.
All right, thank you.
Would anybody else like to be heard on this issue? We have plans to meet with you they're first on the list?
They're at 8 o'clock.
8
with the
o'clock? What's that?
With the Board of Zoning. Yeah, that's-
Yeah, right. We have a joint public meeting?
I figured you guys would be sick of walking that site.
I am.
At least it doesn't have 8 feet of snow on it right now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot easier to walk.
Yeah.
As long as you have hip waders on.
Well, no, there's
Go back out to the highway, don't worry.
yeah, I get flankers.
All right, so are we meeting, where are we meeting?
DPW yard.
DPW yard?
But yeah, there's you won't have to cross the wetlands at the DPW yard. But I do still recommend wearing boots.
Okay. Fair enough. All right, I appreciate it. Anything else? All right, well then, with the RSN, we will continue this until Saturday, the 18th.
Okay, do you want to, what's the date for the next hearing in May?
12, did you say?
May 12th? Okay.
But that is a
Yeah, I
public meeting.
understand. Yep, I just,
Okay, fair enough.
May's filling up too, you know.
So just to clarify, this hearing is continued to May 12th?
No,
To the 18th.
To the 18th.
To Saturday.
The sidewalk.
Because that's
They'll
a public
continue it
meeting
again.
and you're on the
They'll
agenda.
continue it again.
Okay,
Okay.
all right.
I'll be there.
Does that mean you're not going to be there, Marilyn?
I think I'm not going to be at the sidewalk.
We're looking forward to see you in your boots.
I have boots. I've spent a lot of time in my boots.
Too much time, right?
Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you.
Now on to the next applicant.
Yes, what do we have? We have 50 Robin Street. Mr. Sullivan, you get the award for patience.
Oh, okay.
Hope so. Oh, that's yours, okay.
Oh, just pass the
Okay. Well, let's stall for a second, because
Sure.
Arthur's going out for a
Yes,
minute.
no problem.
You know, I don't want to be a stickler for things, but because we didn't get this beforehand, it's a little late to start looking at it and considering things.
Well, this, I think it's on, it's informational.
Informational only.
It's informational only, yeah.
It'll be pretty brief, I promise.
Okay.
I know it's been a long night for you.
Otherwise.
Thank you.
And we,
All right, let's go forward. We're on Robin Street, Mr. Sullivan. Would you introduce yourself for the record, please?
no, not 50 Robin Street, 41 Pleasant Street.
No, we have to do 50 first.
Oh,
50, yeah.
oh, that's right.
They're withdrawing it, but we just wanted to.
Oh,
Sure.
sorry. You're right, John.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Paul Sullivan. I'm here representing the owners of 50 Robbins Street lot. And my clients, the Hazes, have decided to withdraw their application now, and they don't want to move forward at this time.
All right, thank you very much for keeping us informed and up to date. All right, next on the agenda is 41 Pleasant Street, informational purposes only.
Good evening. My name is Paul Sullivan, here representing Robert Silberti. He has an agreement on 41 Pleasant Street, which is the O'Neill's property. It's a 3-acre site that has been before this commission before regarding the vernal pool in the back 2 acres. And he also is intending to purchase 33 Pleasant Street, which abuts the O'Neill's property. And through a combination of those properties, he intends to propose an 8-lot single-family subdivision that will be accessed from the frontage of 41 Pleasant Street. And then there'll be an additional single lot in the rear that will be classified as Lot 9 that will be developed at some future date. As we know that the vernal pool was certified on the rear of the Neal's property, and
I have to appreciate, give my regards to Bob Hannigan. He's still calling it an old quarry hole.
I just read that a couple minutes ago, actually. I realized that, so yeah, yes. So, even though Bob isn't heard, but we do recognize it as a certified vernal pool. And so Bob had done the survey work to locate it, so I asked him to sketch up this plan for us in short order because the property just went on an agreement very recently. And so he's basically, what is laid out here is